Hi, seriously, T, where are you? And what is your name so that way I can address you properly when I want to say hi to you instead of calling you seriously T. That's a good name, but hi, Terry. Good to see you. I'm a dog today. I don't know if that has the tongue option. I'll keep that. Hi, Internet. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday, May 13th. Today I am going to be drinking and talking about Sri Lankan tea. And the reason why I chose this topic today is because I read an article this morning about the success of the very first online tea auction. Hi, Jillian. Jillian in Los Angeles. It's very nice to meet you. I am Elise in Las Vegas, not too far from you. So this is a big deal. An online auction, it's not something that we really deal with too much here at Tealet, since we do like artisanal small batch teas that are all purchased directly from the farmer. We don't go to the auctions. The auctions really are limited to more of the commodity tea neighbors. I like that. We are tea neighbors. The auctions are really targeted more towards the commodity markets and the commodity products, which we don't deal in. But they are a very important part of the tea industry because some of the growers that we do work with have hybrid operations where maybe 20% of their production is handmade and artisanal, like what we focus on, and then the rest of their production is going towards the commodity markets. So they may be making CTC or bulk grade orthodox teas, which are sold in the auction and then would be used in tea bags or in tea blends, as we would see usually in the grocery store. But the tea market, the tea auction, it happens in India. It happens even in tea producing countries in Africa as well as in Sri Lanka. And this is a centralized place where people come together and bid on their teas. They taste the teas and then they bid on the teas. And these are not typically buyers. Like when we think of buyers, even when you think of someone like Tealet or an importer that you would work with on getting your teas wholesale, even those folks are not in these auctions. These auctions are closed out to brokers and to larger distributors that are buying, directly in this auction. And it's a very social dynamic. It's a big building and everybody comes together. They've already tasted the teas. Usually the samples for the different lots that are going to go out on auction have already gone out. And the brokers tend to already know like what tea they're going to be interested in buying. And there's also a lot unknown about these tea auctions too. They're pretty closed networks. You have to have a particular license or invitation to be welcomed to these auctions so that you can participate. So even if I wanted to go, let's say I wanted to go purchase some tea, some bulk grade teas, I wouldn't be able to because I would need a special license. I could perhaps work with a broker who could help me get in. These are closed networks and a lot of unknowns going on within the event. So the fact that it's going online is very unique. And there's been chitter chatter about this happening for years, actually, throughout the different tea auctions in India. They've been talking about bringing it online, bringing more efficiency, more transparency, as they call, to how the trading of tea happens. But now out of necessity, because of the lockdowns and because of the safety of bringing people together in an enclosed space like that, they're having to be brought online. And so, this article I saw was actually published by Microsoft, and it's because a Microsoft software, a division of their software company developed the tool that was used, which they have at this point have just called it MVP. So MVP is minimum viable product. So this is not the final product, but something was developed and something was used in the beginning of April that they claimed success of being able to auction off lots of tea. I wasn't able to find any articles on the exact success, like the prices and the amount of bidders and the amount of people involved or the amount of bids involved, and how those numbers compare to the typical offline auctions that usually happen. But yeah, it was really interesting to see all that happen. So the Sri Lankan auction happens in Colombo, which is the capital of the country, and it has been happening for 126 years. And from everything that I've read up to it so far, and I'm not claiming to be the most researched in it, but everything that I have read so far has said that this hasn't changed much in that 126 years. So leave it to a virus to force some change to this auction so quickly. But here in this article, it says that 16,000 tons of tea were sold in 3 e-auctions between April 4th and the 19th last month. And let's see if there's any other numbers in here other than the 16,000 tons, which is a lot of tea within 3 different auctions. So far it's not saying how many bidders were there and how many bids were made, or even the prices that the tea sold at. So Sri Lanka produces 300,000 tons. So this auction was just 16,000 tons of the 300,000 tons, which is a pretty good amount. So this article does not get any numbers as far as... Oh, here we go. Okay, so they had registered 300 buyers and 8 tea brokers for its first e-auction on April 4th. That's a pretty good success rate, 300 buyers. But I guess, when you don't have any other option to do your business, you are kind of forced to adopt technology and jump on board. So that's pretty impressive that they got 300 buyers in their first launch. In the Microsoft article that I read, it said that they developed the software in a matter of 5 days. So this was all very spontaneous, as is everything that's happening right now, even with us and the virtual tea festival, and even our tea and its people website. Those all things were developed within like a 5-day period. So we're in a time of urgency right now, that when an idea comes across the board, you kind of have to act fast to make it happen. But having a company like Microsoft partnering up with you, will ensure quite a bit more success. If you, hi Allison, good to see you. Good news from the industry front. We're making strides in how things are done. What are the implications of this, of bringing the auction online? Yes, there is a higher potential of more accountability, more transparency, and more information sharing throughout the market. The offline auctions have been rumored, I guess is the right word, to having collusion and to having kind of price fixing going on, which is not good for the industry and can create a lot of hardship and stress for the producers, which at the end of the day does end up affecting us because it affects their ability to produce and their ability to continue to produce tea. So yeah, it's good news that things are being brought online. There's nothing in here talking about a blockchain, which actually, I'm always talking about how blockchain is not always the most optimal solution for supply chain issues in the tea industry, because there's some greater, more costly problems that we have to fix before we can just put all the information on a blockchain, and that blockchains are really best suited for problems that involve trust-based transactions. So in these auctions, this is a trust-based transaction because your oh, there goes the ice cream truck again, like yesterday, same time. The buyer or the broker that is agreeing, to pay for that lot of tea at a certain price, is a trust-based transaction, just like a money transaction. The identity of the tea alone is not a trust-based transaction, and that's what people, when they're always so optimistic about blockchain as a solution for food supply chain issues, they're solely putting all of the value of blockchain on the identity and the authenticity of the product, and that the blockchain is somehow going to magically hold that information. It'll hold the information, but whether or not the information is true or not is still up in question. So here, is kind of interesting, like an auction. And speaking of, when Tealet first launched our wholesale portion of the business years and years ago, we first launched with an auction with the same concept of, tea is sold in auctions, and maybe we don't know the value of this tea, so let's set up an auction so that the market can establish the value on this product. And our main issue was that we launched an auction with no followers, with no signups. So, like that number I said, that this auction in Sri Lanka had 300 buyers in the network, all interacting with each other and putting bids on these teas. You're going to have much more success than when you have just a few buyers. They may be valuing the tea, but there's no competition to drive the price up to where it needs to be. So I think when we first launched our auctions, we had maybe 5 buyers that were interested. One of them being Eric Glass, who still is a good friend of ours and connects in these live sessions often. When he had his tea business, he was on there and made some bids on some teas and actually won a lot of tea. A lot. That was funny. When we were working on that project, we had so many lot jokes. A lot of lots. How many lots of lots? Or, just because the word lot is kind of funny because it's such a common word that we use a lot. But in the context of like an auction, or you designate a certain amount of tea that's going to be going up on auction as a lot. So it's a lot of lots. But yeah, we didn't have great success of driving the prices up to where they needed to be. And so we kind of abandoned that project. It's still there, actually. Tealet does have auction software, which if we wanted to submit a lot and put it out there for people to auction on, we could do that. But we found that in the specialty tea world, the value of the tea is pretty well known throughout the market, and that we can just keep the prices there for people to see and interact with, versus constantly trying to realize a new price through these auctions. So good on the Tea Board of Sri Lanka for successfully executing their first online tea auction, and wish them the best of luck with all their future auctions, and hope that it brings more accountability, more transparency, more information sharing among the industry, so that we can start to solve a lot of the problems that we're often talking about um, in specialty tea. So, specialty tea from Sri Lanka exists. It's not very abundant, and we do work with one producer, specifically Amba Tea Estates. Um, our friend Beverly Wainwright, who now is in Scotland developing an industry there, a small scale artisan tea industry. She was on assignment at Amba Tea Estate and did a great amount of work of developing new tea processing ways, as well as quality control systems. It was pretty deep, and I'm actually going to show a clip from a video that was broadcasted through the newly formed, I'm going to get the name correct, the newly formed Ceylon Artisanal Tea Association, which, was first put together by the folks at Amba Tea Estate, but now is a collection of different specialty tea producers in Sri Lanka. So if you're interested in specialty tea from Sri Lanka, I recommend that you check out Facebook, is where they're most active, so you can see their Facebook page, and that is the Ceylon Artisanal Tea. Just look that up, but it's the Artisanal Tea Association, and they've been doing some live videos. Unfortunately, they're at pretty tricky times, because of the time difference. They're doing their videos at like 5 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday morning, so a little bit difficult for me to check it out, but perhaps in your time zone that might work. And they're doing those videos every week, just featuring a different artisanal tea producer. So today I'm going to talk about Amba Tea Estate, and specifically one of their teas that they make, very clever, interesting tea that is really popular within our network, called Vangeti Peko. And this tea, it means stolen tea, and it's just kind of a cheeky name of paying respect to kind of the history of tea labor in Sri Lanka. It was known that workers would steal tea, so the stolen tea, they would take it home and process it in very crude ways in their home, using a pestle and mortar. And so this of course is a higher quality version of that tea, made in good quality control parameters, that is kind of like that tea. So I'll show you before I start brewing it. You can see the dry leaf. I don't want it to spill. You can see it there. You see it's pretty broken up. This is not like a CTC grade or even like a dusting grade. It was intentionally masticated using the pestle and mortar, just like the stolen tea that the laborers would have made in their own homes. Amba Tea Estate is interesting, and the main thing I think that, outside of developing the new processing styles, for Beverly when she was there, was the systems that she developed. And she's now been gone from Amba, and now, developing new tea industries in new places for years. And those systems still stay in place and still keep their quality high, and, the products coming out really in a fine grade like this. And that is all about the empowerment of the workers. There's a lot of training that goes involved, and not just training of specific tasks within the tea estate and the factory, but that each worker kind of gets rotated around to each position. So in doing that, they are able to develop perspective. So just like yesterday's conversation around truth and around, staying strong on a path of truth. When all of your workers have this increased perspective together, you're going to have, a really high success rate of staying on the right path. Um, and then also having empathy for one another. So oftentimes in a work environment, a lot of the bottlenecks that get formed, and this is something that I had learned in my MBA classes, was that when things are siloed and you have everybody doing their own tasks and they are either rewarded or penalized for not doing their specific task right, it is very easy for them to um, make mistakes and not take accountability for making mistakes, and seeing if that, like, understanding that that mistake could affect somebody else's process later on in the line. So in tea, how that applies, a really good example of that, there's many more, but one example that's very easy to wrap your head around is that um, a tea plucker that only plucks tea and is only incentivized to bring kilos in to get paid for how much tea they plucked will not pay as close attention to their plucking standard, because they're just trying to get quantity. They're just trying to pluck as much as they can. That they will pluck like mature leaves, or they'll pluck leaves that don't roll well and don't process well. So then later on in the process, the people in the factory have to work extra hard to, sort those things out, because they don't roll right and they don't process right. And so at AMBA, what they've learned is that when those pluckers are, there's not really specifically pluckers because everybody kind of rotates and does everything. But when someone is plucking, they are a lot more mindful of plucking the right plucking standard because they empathize with the people in the factory. They've been there before. They've been in their shoes before. They know what it's like. They know how much work it is to sort it out reactively versus proactively doing a better job in plucking. So all of these factors really play a big part in why their tea is so high in quality. So my wares have pretty much cooled by now, so I'll go ahead and put some new hot water in to prime everything, get it ready. So yeah, this is like kind of the same concept of CTC, where you break up the leaf to optimize the oxidation of the leaf to make a black tea, and then it's dried. So yeah, after I steep this and have my first drink, I'm gonna go ahead and play a video from, a clip from the live stream that AMBA had done from, I think they did it from their factory, where they kind of gave a presentation on their operation and their farm, as well as introduced the different teas and did tastings of the different teas that they are making and selling. So AMBA is so small scale, like they're actually one of the more smaller scale operations that we work with in our entire catalog. When they produce tea, they're, at max producing like 12 kilos at a time. So they're not going to these auctions to sell their product. They have, a very exclusive list of buyers, many, within our own network, but also many buyers in Europe. And I think that's been a big push in their marketing, has been the European market. Of course, when Beverly was there, she is from Europe. So, it was kind of second nature to reach out to that market first. So we here at Tealet are doing a lot of work and helping expose their name and their teas into the American market. But one common thing that people say about artisanal teas from Sri Lanka is that they're very costly. And I would agree with them on that. Not all of them have prices that match the level of quality in the tea. I think AMBA is the most fair priced. Oh, look at that beautiful color. It's the most fair priced of all of the artisanal teas that I've sampled and tried from Sri Lanka. Our new friend from Forest Hill Tea, Boudica that we've made here on Instagram. He's newer in the game, and he's applied to work with us. I don't know, the pricing on his stuff, and haven't even sampled. We have to wait until after this whole pandemic passes so that we can actually get some samples of his tea and see what he's been working on. But some of the other teas that we've come across, a lot of silver needles, a lot of like fancy oolongs. They're priced very high, even higher than like Chinese teas of similar processing style. But the quality is nothing near. And not to say that the quality is bad. My opinion on it and the feedback that I've given everybody that we've worked with on this particular issue is that maybe they're not matching the right processing to the tea quite yet. One of them had really fancy packaging. You could tell that they had invested a lot in their packaging and their efforts of creating this premium product. But they were replicating or attempting to replicate famous teas from China. So the one that I just remember so vividly was Dragonwell Longjing. And I had opened the box of the sample and tried it, and it was nothing like Longjing. It was like interesting. It was quite interesting actually, but it was nothing like Longjing. And I think that it's an immediate shoot in your foot if you kind of peg yourself in a corner like that by saying this is Longjing. Because then it creates a context for the buyer to compare your tea with. And then additionally, the price was very high. I found the price to be way higher than the level of the quality of the tea. 3 times higher, 4 times higher, which, in our market doesn't work. I've learned in my years of working with tea shop owners and tea businesses that you can't price a tea high just out of novelty. There's been very few cases where that actually works, but at scale, that doesn't work. The quality in the cup really does have to show through and stand on its own. Very rich aroma. Nice. So it's always a surprise, when I introduce this tea to people, even when I drink it myself, I'm always surprised with how smooth it is, considering how broken the leaf is. It's kind of in policy in Chinese tea craft that the more broken the leaf is, the more tannic it'll be, the more harsh it'll be, the less sweet it will be. But then you get a tea like this, and you see exactly how sweet and, how nice, like how clean that liquor is for how broken the leaf was. And I didn't even use a filter in decanting this tea. So, it really says a lot about the quality and, the integrity of this tea and its processing. Very nice tea. We have several clients that will use this tea in blending. So this would be like a base tea for blending. It also ices well and cold brews well and blends well. The price point is a little bit higher than what tea blenders are used to or accustomed to paying for tea blends, so it's definitely more of a premium. But yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about. And let the people from Yamba explain it themselves. Let's see. We're good now. Perfect.
Great. So just briefly about Amber. Most of you on the phone know Amber and know our products quite well. So I won't take too long, but for the benefit of some who don't necessarily know us, just wanted to give a brief introduction. And as I say, what Nitanjana is going to focus on today is some of our newer and lesser known teas that most of you may, most of you will not know about, and I hope may be of interest to some of you. Amber, in terms of its terroir, its climate, its soil, is located in the Uva region of Sri Lanka, on the southeast edge of the highlands, and it is very classic Uva. Although it is raining hard outside at the moment, this area of the highlands tends to get less rain than the central highlands and the western highlands. We have heavy monsoons in March, April, and October, November, but it can be very dry the rest of the year. As a result, we have quite dry, gravelly soil. We're well known for what's called uva patana, which is a kind of high plateau, open grassland. And our teas, as a result, have quite distinctive flavors, particularly famous for a silicate in the soil that imparts a wintergreen undertone to the teas, and is traditionally associated with uva teas. But in general, because of the relatively dry and difficult climate, uva teas probably have a fairly intense flavor. Any plants under stress are going to give off that higher flavor. Sorry, got the right button here on my screen. As I say, some photos of amber and the views around amber, but you can see relatively dry climate around amber. Amber itself, what the four of us who founded Amber all work in economic and social development around the world, and we really created the organization as a social enterprise. Our objective is to maximize local incomes and local employment by showing local farmers and local villagers how they can add much more value, creating value-added artisanal products from the agricultural produce around them and authentic tourism experiences. And that's why we exist. We measure every month to what extent we are impacting the local community. We look at this chart here, shows how average wages at Amber have grown over the last 10 plus years, almost more than tenfold over that period. We also look at what is the total amount we are spending within the local community between wages and contractors and outgrowers and construction workers and so on. And again, you've seen that number grow from, well, much less than 1 million rupees a year to almost 40 million rupees a year last year. So that's why we work here and how we measure ourselves. Amber is organic. We use no artificial chemicals around the estate. One of our principles is trying to restore the natural environment here. The photo there is actually our first batch of rescue cows. Our cows were rescued from the abattoir, and they produce our manure and our urine that we use for our natural compost around the estate. And as I say, the estate itself, we use absolutely no artificial chemicals. Nitanjana will tell you more as we talk about the teas in a few minutes, but for our handmade teas, probably one of the most distinctive things about Amber is that we use only one leaf in a bud. At the big commercial estates, 2 leaves in a bud would be considered very fine leaf. In our case, when Beverly, our original tea maker, first started experimenting, she found that even the second leaf was too coarse and wiry to roll by hand. So we use for our classic TGOP, our Tippy Golden Orange Pico, and our Slow Withered Green, the one leaf in a bud. And as you all know, with the higher concentration of the polyphenols and the antioxidants and so on in the younger leaves, that's part of the reason why our tea is supposed to taste so good. As I said, our tea, what we're most famous for as well is the fact that all of our signature teas are produced by hand. In the case of our TGOP, the Orange Pico, they are rolled by hand, half a kilo at a time, by the same ladies who do the plucking. Our green, our slow withered green tea, which many of you again carry and sell around the world, is rolled by hand in a wok, somewhat in the style that is common in parts of China. And then there's also our famous Vangeli Pico, which many of you also sell around the world. What we also call our illegal tea or our thieves' tea. The Vangeli Pico is when we started, Beverly asked the ladies, well, how do you make tea at home? You're surrounded by tea leaves, you must take it home and make tea. Traditionally, the tea pluckers and the families would make tea by pounding it in the vangetti, the pestle and mortar. We started making tea that way. It is actually technically illegal to make tea that way. On the days when only tea was made on the big estates, was grown on the big estates, if you're making tea at home, you're obviously stealing the leaves. That's why we call it our illegal tea or our thieves' tea, and it makes a brisker brew, more like an English breakfast tea. We also make several tisanes, most famously our lemongrass. Citronella, a close relative of lemongrass, grows wild on the hillsides around us, and that's why we started planting lemongrass. And
wanted to make sure you guys had the
whatever
chance
reason,
to see that.
our lemongrass has a stronger color, flavor, smell than any lemongrass anybody's ever come across. And again, many of you on
that is Amba. That was a nice introduction to the Amba estate from Simon Bell, who is the managing operator there that we work with. So yeah, very exciting stuff from Sri Lanka. Not very common to see this. What is common to see are very picturesque landscapes of, the rolling beautiful tea hills throughout the landscape, and the romantic countryside trains that you can take and see the large tea fields, which are all, owned by the large estates. Either they're owned by the large estates and going towards commodity tea production, or they're not in production, to be honest. There's a lot of tea around the world that's it just becomes so difficult for producers to stay in business and to remain competitive, that they just leave it be and let it go wild. And that's where organizations like, let's say, the man that was sitting there with Simon in that presentation is like the manager of the garden and of the factory, and he's local. And he's learning a lot, in his time of working at Amba and making these teas and learning the business and learning management. People like him will be able to go off and create other systems throughout the country with these abandoned tea gardens. So, that's a lot of the work that we do, is empowering those folks to say, don't give up. The work you're doing is incredible. The market may not be fully appreciating it just yet, but in time they will. And when they do, you can take that skill and empower other communities that are struggling. When I went to the North America Tea Conference in 2014, end of 2014 in Niagara Falls, there was a presentation there from an NGO that had done some, economic research into the sustainability of the tea industry, and they had used Sri Lanka as like the key market for their research, and found that this was back in 2014. So I'd imagine things are much different now, as the market price really hasn't risen, and cost of production does always. That is one thing guaranteed: your cost of production and inflation are always going to continue to go up. But at that time, the average profit for a producer of tea was negative 25 cents a kilo. So that means it's not a profit, it means it's a loss. So for every kilo of tea that's produced and then sent into the market, sent to those auctions that I talked about at the beginning of the stream, they lose 25 cents. So any smart business person would see that that's a dead-end thing and not worth to pursue. One thing unique about Sri Lanka industry that is, I'm so surprised that this happens, is that there is a law that protects the price that a factory pays to a tea grower for their green leaf. So this is not like the estates that own their own gardens, own their own tea bushes, and hire staff that would go out and do all of the management and the harvesting, and then that gets processed in the factory. There's something else called bought leaf factory system, and a lot of times the estates are bought leaf factory in addition to processing their own tea. And the bought leaf factory will buy green leaf, harvested fresh leaf from small growers. So either small growers, like local people, will plant the tea themselves in pursuit of selling leaf to a bought leaf factory, or it'll be like abandoned tea gardens from the colonial estate system that has been reassigned to the local people, and so the local people become tea growers, but they don't have tea factories, so they will sell their leaf to the factories, and so that's actually where a lot of the exploitation and the corruption is coming in, and there's zero accountability about how these factories are interacting with the small growers. In some places in India I've been to, I've learned that the small tea growers are paid like 12 cents a kilo for their leaf. In Nepal, last time I went, it was a very big problem. Everybody was bickering about it. And by everybody, these are the local people that I'm staying with, and they're all small tea growers that sell their leaf to big factories, and they were all bickering that the big factories haven't even paid them for months. So not only are they getting paid a low wage, or not, it's not a wage, it's a price. They're selling their leaf. Not only are they paid a low price, but they're not paid at all. So it's like if you supply a product to a retail store, and that retail store still needs your product in order to sell it, but then they don't pay you for it. And in our business culture, we wouldn't let that fly, but in places where people have no other option, those things happen all the time, and they never get accounted for. Fair trade doesn't account for it. Even journalists are not accounting for this and talking on this subject because it is so nuanced and it's so complex, and there's all these different parts. But in Sri Lanka, it's very unique because they have a rule that says that factories must pay the small tea grower that's selling them the leaf at least 36% of the made tea's value. So, like, let's say for example, the made tea, so that's the finished tea when it goes to auction or whatever. The made tea has a value of $4 a kilo. Then the small grower would need to be paid $1.44 a kilo for the green leaf, and then the factory can take the rest as their. It's not a profit, right? It's still it's still just their income, their revenue from the tea. But at least it guarantees that the small tea grower is getting paid for all of the work and effort that they put into actually producing the raw materials that goes into the processing. In India, it's a completely different animal. Like I said, I've seen places where they say, oh yeah, we only get paid 12 cents a kilo. It takes me about 3 hours to harvest a kilo of green leaf. I know I'm slow and I'm not advanced at it, and so I'm sure with experience you could definitely lower that time, maybe even do like a kilo an hour if you're really good. But if you're only making 12 cents for that kilo, that's like pretty much like 12 cents an hour for very laborious hard work. So even $1.44 a kilo is low, in my opinion. So that's why I feel a lot more confident, not relying in the fair trade system, not relying in these, national level laws that are protecting the small growers like this. I want to rely on doing business directly with the families and the people that are doing all of that work. So, encouraging as much vertical integration as possible and value add as possible from the original producer. That you can be assured when you're buying that product, not only are you valuing what's in the cup in the final product. So I value it. This is how much I value it at. That's the first step that we got to work on. The next step is then ensuring that all of the people in that value chain leading up to this cup are getting, a fair representation and a fair exchange of value for all of that work that they've done. So yeah, I've turned the link on if anybody wants to join and have tea with me and maybe talk about Sri Lankan tea. Maybe talk about some Sri Lankan tea that you like. Or Ceylon, as we can say. So Ceylon is really like the marketing term. I'm not too sure. I'm gonna look that up right now so I can let us all be correct in our nomenclature. The origins of the word Ceylon. So I mean, yeah, it's like that. So I always thought it was a word like Formosa. So Formosa is kind of like a marketing term for Taiwan. It's similar. So it's a colonizing word. So it was assigned to the island of Sri Lanka when the British colonized. So it does have colonial roots to it. So depending on your prerogative and your perspective of how you like to handle these types of things, if you do like to shy away from colonial rooted addresses or um, intentions, yeah, maybe you wouldn't want to use this word. Occupied by the Portuguese in the 16th century and by the Dutch in the 17th century, the island was ceded to the British in 1796, became a crown colony in 1802, and was united under British rule in 1815. At Ceylon, it became independent in 1948. Its name was changed to Sri Lanka in 1972. So there's that education right there. So yeah, before it was Ceylon, I'd like to know that. So settlers arrived in Sri Lanka in late 6th century BC. Probably from northern India. That's interesting. I always thought that, it was just kind of a direct, it's so close. I know that there's like folklore. There's a very famous legend. Actually, my favorite Hindi legend involves Sri Lanka, Hanuman. Um, so I know that it's been a part of the. Yeah, but this is 5th century BC, so this is a long time ago. The Sinhalese from North India went there, and then in 14th century South India dynasty seized power. Okay, so that's when the South Indian but then the Portuguese seized in 16th century, so that was pretty short-lived, and now it's at where it's at now. So little Sri Lankan history there for anybody that's ever been interested in that. It's so funny how like we can go without ever really studying these things. I guess if you're a really studious person, you would just proactively do that yourself. But even if you're a studious person, it can be kind of intimidating to think about all of the things that you'd have to take on to fully understand things like that. But that's the beauty of the internet. But that took me less than 2 minutes to read that. Of course, I'm going to forget it. I'd have to reread it, the next time I'm interested in knowing it. Yeah, this tea is still very good. It's in the second brew. Very brisk. It is very brisk, and also its energy is actually quite. But I needed that. I had a big, bowl of brown rice with spinach before I started this, so I was feeling like a little. It's healthy. It was something good to eat, but it was a lot of food. So I was feeling a little sluggish after eating that bowl. So this tea is definitely helping bring back my energy levels. People say that too. Like between Ceylon and like Assam tea, that it can be quite that brisk is also associated with some like kind of wiry buzz to it. Um, Especially when the tea is so broken, right? Because when you break the leaf and its processing is releasing a lot more of the tannins and then also when it's brewing too. So when you brew, because it has so much surface area, there's going to be so much more release of not only the flavor but also of the caffeine and the theanine and all the other things that affects your physiological state when you drink it. That's why I'm kind of brewing it carefully. I didn't put so much leaf. This tea does get bitter if you overbrew it, and I have done that before, so I have that experience. Let's see how broken it is. Pretty even, consistent color throughout, though. You can tell it's not as oxidized as it could have been. So they definitely, put this into the dryer to finish the processing before, it was completely oxidized. It still has a little reddish color to it, reddish greenish color to it. Not like CTC. So like CTC is completely black. The little pellets of tea inside of the tea bags is completely black. It's fully oxidized. And yeah, it wouldn't brew into something so translucent and beautiful like this. I mean, you can see through it, right? But then it still has like a really vibrant sheen to it. It's a good tea. This tea is available on teaanditspeople.com. So if you're interested in trying this tea and tasting for yourself and learning for yourself, experiencing for yourself, you can visit that website. And let me just put that up. That's a good idea. And if you haven't visited our new community website, I recommend that you go check that out. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good content, and actually, all of our live videos are live, or they're up. So we have the 15 gram tin, 1 ounce bag, or 500 gram bag available on the site. So now even our bulk teas are available to everybody, to consumers or to anybody. So I'm just putting the link here on all of the internet platforms for Instagram. If you just go visit teaanditspeople.com and then search for the Vengetti Pecco, you should be able to find it. Hi, Anna. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well in Boston. Nice to catch up. Maybe I'll give you a call tomorrow. Try to get one last steep out of this tea before I sign out. Yeah, I was thinking maybe I put that tea on sale. Maybe I'll put it on sale. Should do that. Yeah, all of these videos, these virtual tea party videos, are on this website, Tea and Its People. And then if you just go to the menu at the top of the page, the last selection there is Virtual Tea Party Live Tea Education. If you click that link, it will take you where you can see all of the, here, I'll go ahead and just show. So here's the website. Now, get out of here. So this is the home screen here. You can scroll through and see everything. But if you, let me just make this smaller so you can see it fully. If you go to this menu bar here on the top left, and then the last selection here, Virtual Tea Party, every video is here with a small blurb about what that day's video is about, so you can kind of see what you are interested in learning about that day. Yeah, we have over 50 videos live now, so it's a lot. Speaking of, depending on what happens, I am allowing myself to take a break tomorrow and Friday from broadcasting this stream. I believe I will be involved in tomorrow's Tea Talks with Sam and folks. We're going to be talking about last week's virtual Tea Fest and virtual Tea House experience, and trying to get some feedback and see how we can improve that experience next time we want to do it. So that will be happening tomorrow, but I'm just not too sure I'm going to broadcast that or if I'm going to do a stream on Friday. We'll just have to see how everything ends up, how I'm feeling. My emotional state has been very erratic lately. No need to worry about me. I'm fine. As with everybody, I think the fatigue and all of that is really starting to hit in hard. And just confusion. It's just overall confusion. You know, I'm feeling pretty secure in my well-being and in my health and my food and my rest and my exercise. So that's why I say, you know, no need to worry about me, but just a lot of uncertainty about community and about the people around me and how everybody else is doing. Yeah, I know I don't need to be worried about that, but I know everybody is having some level of worry in their head, so I think it's completely appropriate, and I'm not giving myself a hard time for dealing with those types of emotions, but I am creating my own boundaries for that. And you know, if that's something that you are also dealing with, I'd like to encourage you to also think about what boundaries you need for yourself to thrive and to. Hi, seeking neon Buddha. I like that. What is neon Buddha? Sounds very intriguing. And did you find neon Buddha, or are you still seeking? I'd imagine that you'd change your Instagram handle if you weren't seeking anymore, if you found him. So funny on Instagram when you see someone's handle like that. It could be a friend. It could be someone I know, but I don't, as of right here, reading your name, I don't think I know you. And my time is almost up on Instagram. I've almost been on for an hour, so I think I'm going to go get some work done. And again, go check out Tea and Its People. Smiles back at you. teaanditspeople.com if you want to check out this tea. Again, it was the Vengetti Pecco from Amba Tea Estate. Bye. All right, folks. Yeah, I'm going to sign out across the internet as well. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week, and I'll be seeing you soon. Much love. Peace.